My own mother, the woman who raised me, fed me, taught me how to tie my shoes, became the one person I never thought I'd fear. I trusted her with my whole heart. I never imagined she could look me in the eyes and lie while planning something that would shatter my entire world. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. This story is hard for me to tell, but I need to get it off my chest. It started with whispers, soft hints, and fake smile. At first, I didn't notice. My sister Jaleesa had been trying to have a baby for years, and after round of failed IVF, she was completely broken. I felt so bad for her. I cried with her. I prayed for her. I thought my mom and I were just supporting her through the pain. But then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, and I was nervous, but I was happy too. I already had 2 kids, and I loved being a mom. I thought my family would be happy for me. Instead, everything changed. My mom looked at me differently. She said things like, "You've already had your joy, maybe this baby was sent for someone else." I didn't understand what she meant at first. But then Jaleesa started acting strange too, asking me what I'd name her baby, bringing over baby clothes and calling herself Mama J. That's when my stomach started to twist. I laughed it off. I told myself they were just being silly, that they were excited. But then my mom sat me down and said, "You need to think about what's best for everyone. You're not rich. Jaleesa can give this baby a better life. Why are you being selfish?" I was shocked. I told her no. I told her this was my baby, but she didn't stop. She said I was being ungrateful, that I didn't understand how hard it was to watch Jaleesa suffer. Then my boyfriend started pulling away. He began saying things like, "Well, maybe your mom has a point. It would solve a lot of problems." That's when I started to feel like I was standing alone in the middle of something much bigger than, like they were all in on it. And they were. But I didn't know just how far it would go. I didn't know how deep the betrayal really ran. I didn't know that my mother, my own blood, would do something that would nearly destroy me. Jaleesa was always the one who got everything first. The biggest room, the newest clothes, the loudest praise. I didn't mind it growing up. She was older, prettier, and smarter. At least that's what my mom always said. I learned to live in her shadow, and most of the time, I was okay with it. She was my sister, after all. But something changed in her over the years. After she married Malcolm, they started trying for a baby right away. At first, it was all excitement and planning. Baby names, nursery ideas, dream schools. Then came the doctor visits, the hormone shots, the surgeries, the miscarriages. I watched her go from hopeful to heartbroken. After 6 years, her eyes lost that shine. There was no laughter in her voice anymore, just silence. She stopped coming around, stopped picking up calls. When I did see her, she looked hollow, like a shell trying to smile. So when I told the family I was pregnant, I expected her to be distant, maybe even jealous. But instead, she showed up at my door with a big forced grin and a box of baby clothes. "You're glowing," she said. "I'm so happy for you." The words were sweet, but her eyes didn't match. There was something off. I just couldn't put my finger on it. She started texting me every day, asking how I felt, what I was eating, how big the baby was. At first, I thought she was just trying to be supportive. Maybe it was her way of staying close to motherhood, even if it wasn't hers. But then she began saying things like, "I dreamed about my baby last night and she looked just like you." Or, "I know this sounds crazy, but I feel so connected to him." She knew I was having a boy. But the way she said it, it sounded like she believed he was already hurt. She started coming to my doctor's appointment. At first, I thought she just wanted to bond. I let her come. I thought it would make her feel better. But soon, she was asking questions like, "Will I be listed on the birth certificate?" in front of the nurses. I laughed, thinking it was a weird joke. But she didn't laugh back. She looked serious, calm, like she had thought about it. One day, she brought me a small photo album. Inside were pictures of a nursery, painted soft green, with a crib, rocking chair, and stuffed animals. "I've been getting it ready," she said, "for him." That's when I realized something was wrong. She had built an entire room for my baby. Not a future baby. My baby. I tried to set boundaries, told her I was feeling overwhelmed. She got quiet. Then she got cold. She said, "You already have 2. You don't need this one the way I do." My heart dropped. I didn't know how to respond. It was like I didn't recognize her anymore. Her voice sounded the same, but everything else felt foreign. Off. Chilling. She wasn't mourning anymore. She was waiting. Planning. In her mind, my baby was already hers. At first, I didn't even notice it happening. It wasn't a single moment that told me something was wrong. It was a slow, creeping feeling that grew inside me like a knot I couldn't untangle. One evening, I overheard my mom on the phone with someone. She didn't know I was nearby. I couldn't hear everything, just enough to catch the words. "She'll come around. She always does." I didn't think much of it then. Maybe she was talking about something else. But that small sentence stuck in my head. Then little things began to shift. People I trusted started acting differently. My cousin Kenya stopped inviting me to family dinners. When I asked her why, she mumbled something about keeping the peace. I didn't understand. Peace from what? I hadn't done anything wrong. During one visit to my mom's house, I noticed a baby onesie on the couch, one I hadn't bought. I picked it up and said, "This is cute." My mom looked at me without blinking and said, "Oh, Jaleesa brought that. She said you wouldn't mind." That confused me. Why would Jaleesa be buying things for my baby and leaving them in my mom's house? Things got worse when I was about 7 months along. One day, I woke up to find my boyfriend gone. No note, no text. Just vanished. He came back that night like nothing happened. When I asked where he'd been, he shrugged and said he needed space to think. But think about what? He wouldn't say. That week, he barely looked at me. I felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. I tried to talk to my mom about it. She gave me this half-sympathetic, half-annoyed look and said, "Maybe he's just overwhelmed. You should try to make things easier for him." Then she added, "If you weren't being so stubborn, this wouldn't be so hard on everyone." I froze. Stubborn? What was I being stubborn about? I started noticing how often people said things like, "for the good of the family," or "you don't want to cause drama." It was like they were all reading from the same script. I didn't understand what was happening. Why did it feel like I was being punished for being pregnant? The final straw came when I checked my phone one night and found that someone had gone through my private messages. Things I had shared with close friends, doubts, fears, late-night thoughts, were now being quoted back to me in family group chats. "She's clearly overwhelmed," someone wrote. "Maybe she isn't thinking clearly." That's when I realized they were trying to paint me as unstable. They weren't asking me to give up my baby. They were trying to convince everyone else that I wasn't fit to keep him. That's when I stopped trusting anyone. I remember the smell of chicken still in the oven and the quiet hum of the fridge. It was supposed to be a regular Sunday. My mom said she was coming by to drop off groceries. Jaleesa said she'd help me organize the baby stuff. My Aunt Regina and Aunt Monique were with. I didn't question it. Family just showed up sometime. But I should have known something was off the moment I saw the serious looks on their faces. No smiles. No hugs. Just straight to business. My mom sat at the kitchen table like it was a board meeting. Jaleesa stood near the counter, arms crossed. My aunties didn't say much, just kept nodding like backup dancers. I stood in the middle of my own kitchen, confused, holding a spoon and still wearing a stained apron. My mom didn't ease into it. "We've all talked," she said, calm like she was discussing the weather. "And we think it's time you stop being selfish." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She motioned toward Jaleesa. "You know what she's been through. It's not fair for you to throw this in her face. You already have 2 children. She has none. This is God giving you a chance to do the right thing." I felt like I'd left my body. I looked at each of them. No one flinched. No one smiled. I waited for someone to say, "Just kidding." But no one did. Jaleesa finally spoke. "I've already got the crib. The car seat. I'm ready. I can give him everything." Her voice cracked a little, like she was rehearsing pain for sympathy. I stepped back. "He's not a donation," I said. "He's my son." Regina, who had barely said a word, suddenly leaned forward and said, "Girl, don't be stupid. Families make sacrifices. You'd still see him." I felt my heart pound. "Like a babysitter?" I asked. "Like I'd get visitation with the child I birthed?" They all started talking at once. "It's not like that. Don't twist it. We're trying to help you make the right choice." That's when Mom dropped the bomb. She stood up, slow and deliberate, and said, "If you keep this up, if you keep making this about you, you're going to lose us. All of us. Your family." I stood there with my hand on the counter for support, because I suddenly couldn't feel my legs. My own mother had just told me that unless I handed over my baby, I wouldn't have a family anymore. I couldn't believe it. I thought of my kids sleeping down the hall. I thought of how excited they were to meet their baby brother. I thought of the tiny kicks I felt every night, the heartbeat I had heard, the bond one had already formed, but none of that mattered to them. To them, I was a problem standing in the way of their solution. I told them to get out. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. My voice was quiet, but it shook. They hesitated like they thought I was bluffing. But when I grabbed my phone and started dialing, they finally moved. No one hugged me goodbye. No one said a word. They just walked out like I was no one. After they walked out of my kitchen, the silence wasn't just quiet, it was loud. It filled every corner of my apartment. My phone didn't buzz with texts anymore. No calls. No check-ins. It was like I'd been erased. One by one, everyone disappeared. My cousin stopped tagging me in photos. My auntie stopped liking my posts. Jaleesa blocked me completely. And my mom. She vanished like I never existed. I kept telling myself I didn't care, that I was strong enough, that I didn't need any of them. But the truth was I was still pregnant, still vulnerable, and still hoping deep down that someone would come to their senses and say, "We're sorry. We crossed a line." That never happened. My baby shower was the final confirmation. I had planned it myself. I didn't want anything big, just a small celebration. I ordered a cake, blew up balloons, cooked finger foods. My kids helped decorate. They were so excited to see everyone, especially their grandma. They kept asking when she'd show up. I smiled and told them, soon. But no one came. Not a single soul. Just me, two confused little kids, and a whole table of untouched food. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and cried so hard I thought I'd throw up. My back ached, my feet were swollen, and my heart felt like it had been ripped in half. I couldn't even explain it to my kids. How do you tell a child their family abandoned them before the baby was even born? Then the strange things started happening. I began getting mail addressed to J. Hamilton, my sister's married name, at my address. I thought it was a mistake until I opened one and saw it was from a pediatric clinic. I hadn't even delivered yet. Then, during a routine appointment, the nurse said, "Your mother's already called to confirm your induction time." I froze. "What?" I asked. She checked her notes. "Yes, Charlene Hamilton. She said she was helping with your chart." I had never given my mom permission to access my record. I didn't even know how she found out where I was getting care. I felt sick. My privacy had been invaded, and worse, it was being used against me. A week later, I came home from a checkup and found my bedroom drawers open. My prenatal vitamins had been moved. My file folder, the one with all my medical paperwork, was half missing. I knew I didn't misplace it. I always kept it in the same spot. I asked my husband if he'd seen anything. He shrugged and said, "You probably just forgot where you put it." That was when I knew. He was still in touch with them. They weren't just giving me the silent treatment. They were watching, plotting, building something quietly in the background while I walked around tired, hormonal, and alone. It wasn't just about pressuring me anymore. They were preparing to take him, without my consent. Giving birth should have been a moment of joy. A sigh of relief. A warm, tear-filled release after months of pain and pressure. But for me, it was a quiet war zone. No flowers, no family, no husband holding my hand. Just the beep of machines and a nurse checking vitals every few minutes. I went into labor late at night. The contractions were long and painful, and the stress made them worse. I had no one in the room with me. My husband had stopped coming home 2 weeks before, claiming he needed space. My mother hadn't spoken to me in a month, so I gritted my teeth, held onto the cold hospital bed rails, and screamed through the pain alone. When I heard my son's first cry, something inside me cracked open. All the fear, all the betrayal, all the loneliness, it disappeared for a moment. I was holding him. He was here, warm and tiny and perfect. I named him Isaiah. He looked up at me with wide, sleepy eyes, and I felt like maybe I could finally breathe again. The nurses were kind. One in particular, Miss Reyna, stayed a little longer than required. Maybe she saw the fear in my eyes. Maybe she'd seen cases like mine before. "You rest," she said softly. "We've got him. He's safe." I believed her. But a few hours later, when I opened my eyes, his bassinet was empty. My brain didn't register it right away. I thought maybe the nurse had taken him for a checkup or bath. I waited 5 minutes. 10. Then I pressed the call button. No answer. I pressed it again and again until someone finally walked in. "Where's my baby?" I asked. My voice came out shaky and thin. The nurse froze. "He was supposed to be here." I sat up dizzy. My stitches were burning. My hands were trembling. "What do you mean he was supposed to be here?" She ran out of the room. Moments later, 3 more nurses came in, followed by a hospital administrator. They asked me a dozen questions. Had I signed any early discharge forms? Did anyone have permission to take the baby out? No. I shouted. "He stays with me. He never leaves this room unless I say so." Then came the blow. Someone had attempted to discharge my baby from the nursery using forged paperwork. When they pulled up the file, the name listed was Charlene Hamilton, my mother. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. I kept asking them to repeat it. "You're sure? You're absolutely sure?" They nodded. One of the security officers looked uncomfortable as he confirmed it. She had even brought an empty car seat, said I was too tired to handle the baby and had given her permission to help. But she didn't expect hospital policy to require in-person confirmation from the mother. That small rule saved me. They found Isaiah in a quiet corner of the nursery, swaddled, unharmed, but no longer where he should have been. I held him against my chest and rocked him, trying not to scream. That was the moment I knew I had to disappear, or they'd never stop. I didn't wait for another warning. There wasn't going to be one. The hospital incident made it clear. They weren't just trying to wear me down anymore. They were ready to take my baby by force. That night, I didn't sleep. I just held Isaiah against my chest, feeling every breath he took, counting each tiny rise and fall. I kept replaying it all. My mother walking into that hospital with fake paperwork, prepared to walk out with my son like I didn't exist. The way they all fell in line behind. My own husband, nowhere to be found. I had no plan. No car. barely any money left in my account. But I had a heartbeat of pure panic pushing me forward. I waited until past midnight, when the halls were quiet and the nurses changed shifts. Raina, the same nurse who'd stayed with me during delivery, walked in and looked at me like she already knew. "I need to leave," I whispered. My voice cracked. "Now." She didn't ask questions. She looked at Isaiah, then back at me and nodded slowly. "Give me 10 minutes, she said. I wrapped Isaiah up in a hospital blanket, tucked him into my arms, and waited in the bathroom stall like she told me to. My legs were weak. My body still ached from the delivery. But none of that mattered. Fear kept me upright. Raina came back with a jacket and a worn duffel bag. She handed me $20, a pack of formula, and a slip of paper. "Shelter in Fayetteville," she said. "They don't ask questions. Don't give them your real name. Just say Angela sent me." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She walked me to the emergency exit, pretending to check a supply closet. The door opened, and a blast of cold night air hit me in the face. I stepped outside barefoot. That first step onto the pavement felt like walking off a cliff. I had no car, no ride. I walked to the nearest bus stop, hoping nobody would question a woman in a hospital gown carrying a newborn at 1:30 in the morning. No one did. When I got to the shelter, the woman at the front desk took one look at me and led me to a small room in the back. She didn't ask my name, just handed me a towel, a sandwich, and said, "You're safe now." But I didn't feel safe. Not really. Every knock at the door made my stomach drop. Every time someone walked past my room, I thought it was them. My mother. My husband. Jaleesa. I imagined them kicking the door down, saying I was unstable, that I'd stolen my own baby. I barely slept. I didn't eat. I just watched Isaiah breathe and kept the duffel bag packed by the door. But something shifted in me during those days at the shelter. Fear turned into anger. They tried to destroy me, break me, erase me, but I was still here, and I was ready to fight back. Just when I thought I had escaped, the papers came. Thick, official envelopes delivered to the shelter, stamped with my full name. The staff handed them to me with careful eyes, like they already knew what was inside. I locked myself in the bathroom to open them. My hands shook so hard I could barely tear through the seal. Inside was the lawsuit, filed by my own mother and Jaleesa, backed by my husband. They were petitioning for full custody of Isaiah. Their claim? I was mentally unfit, delusional, paranoid, and emotionally unstable due to postpartum complications. They said I had run away in the middle of the night, abandoned my husband, endangered the baby. They said I was a threat. It was the worst moment of my life. They weren't just trying to steal my son in secret anymore. They were trying to do it in court, using the system against me. They were painting me as a hysterical woman who couldn't tell reality from fantasy. And with their money, their lawyers, their perfect public image, I knew they could make it believable. But I wasn't the same scared girl they cornered in my kitchen. Not anymore. While I hid in that shelter, I started building my defense. Every conversation I had with Jaleesa, I had texts. Every weird thing my mom ever said, I'd recorded voice notes on my phone. I had screenshots of group messages, emails, and even photos of the baby nursery Jaleesa built months before my due date, when no one was supposed to know the gender yet. Even the hospital had kept a record of the forged discharge attempt. I created a burner email account. I uploaded everything, labeled it, dated it. I wasn't sure yet who I'd send it to, but I needed to make sure it didn't all disappear. I couldn't afford a lawyer, but I found a legal clinic in town that helped women in crisis. When I showed the counselor what I had, her face went pale. "This isn't just messed up," she said. "This is a coordinated setup." I started documenting everything. When I left the hospital, who I talked to, every message they sent, even missed calls. I kept a notebook by my bed and wrote down every detail I could remember. My memories were the only thing they couldn't twist. They underestimated me. They thought I'd crumble, thought I'd break under pressure, cry, beg, fall apart. But I didn't. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was fighting for Isaiah. Every lie they told, I met with proof. Every accusation, I backed up with cold, hard evidence. They had money. They had each other. But I had truth. Walking into that courtroom was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My heart was pounding, but my grip on Isaiah was steady. My two older kids, Caden and Malia, were with a shelter volunteer in the hallway. I kissed them before I walked in, whispering, "Mommy's going to fix this." I didn't know if that was true, but I needed them to hear it. When I stepped inside, I saw them all on the other side. My mother in a tailored suit, sitting with confidence. Jaleesa looking calm and polished like this was some business deal. And my husband, pretending he was just worried about the baby's well-being. Not one of them looked at me with shame. Just control. Like they still thought they could win. The judge asked me to speak. I stood, knees shaking but voice clear, and I told him everything. I told him how my mother cornered me in my own kitchen, how they all pushed me to hand over my baby like he was a spare coat. I explained how they ghosted me when I said no, how no one came to the baby shower, how they tried to isolate me from every person I trusted. Then I got to the hospital. I showed the documents. The forged discharge forms with my mother's name. The pediatric clinic letters sent to my address with Jaleesa's name on them. I played the voice note of my mom saying, "You already have 2, what's one more?" I talked about my older kids, how they cried at the empty baby shower, how they asked every day when grandma was coming back, how they were being raised in a shelter now, not because I was unfit, but because my own family tried to strip us of everything we had. I looked right at my mother when I said, "I carried 3 children. I raised 2 already. If I was unfit, where were you for the past 10 years? Why now? Why only when Jaleesa couldn't have one?" She blinked but didn't respond. Their lawyer tried to twist everything. Tried to say I was emotional, that I fabricated things, that I was overwhelmed and imagining malice where there was none. But then I handed the judge my binder. Every email, every screenshot, a log of every time they tried to contact doctor, every gift they sent to their baby, while I was still pregnant. He read silently for what felt like an hour. When he finally spoke, he said, "This isn't a custody case. This is a custody ambush." He ruled in my favor. Full parental rights. No visitation. No shared custody. I didn't cry from happiness. I cried from exhaustion. My knees gave out, and I sat down right there in the courtroom, Isaiah in my arms. My mother's face as the ruling was read? Blank, like her world had shattered, but she still didn't understand how. That was the moment I knew I'd won. Starting over wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I left everything behind, my job, my friends, my neighborhood, every piece of my old life, and moved to Charlottesville, Virginia. I changed my name. I changed my kids' last names. We became invisible on purpose. For the first few weeks, I jumped at every sound. Every knock on the door made my heart rate. But little by little, things quieted. I enrolled Caden and Malia in a new school. Found a part-time job. Got Isaiah into daycare. It was hard. Some nights I cried on the kitchen floor when the kids were asleep. But it was ours. A real home. The best part? My children were safe. Smiling again. Laughing. Caden drew a picture of our family with 4 stick figures and wrote, "Us now, and no more bad people." I taped it to the fridge. Isaiah is growing fast. He has my eyes and his own little way of clinging to me like he remembers everything, even if he can't say it yet. Each time I wake up to his tiny giggle or watch him sleep peacefully, I remind myself, I did this. I protected him. I don't have my old family anymore, but I don't miss them. What I have now is real, and it's enough. They tried to break me. They tried to steal from me, but in the end, all they did was set me free. And no matter what happens, no matter who tries to come back, they'll never touch my children again. My son's smile every morning is my answer to everything. That's my peace. That's my victory. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? Would you have made the same choice I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more powerful real-life stories. You're not alone. We're in this together.